Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Sunday message for August 20th of 2023. At this point in our development through our journey of the book Lessons in Truth by Emily Cady, we know that there is one creative source that stands behind everything. We also know that each and every one of us have come from that same source. We come through different parents, but our soul, the truth of our being, comes through the one source God. We each come through with different bodies, different feelings, different thoughts, different ideas, and likes and different, and dislikes. We come through each and every one of us as beautiful, unique, individual creations from source. Just like snowflakes that are where there's no two of us that are exactly alike, we can have similar likes and dislikes. We can like the same kind of food or the same kind of flower. But you look at all the intrinsic aspects of who and what we are, there are no two that are exactly the same. And yet, we all have one thing in common. We are all the children of God. We all come from the one source. And since we have all come from that one source, then we have to acknowledge that at the very center of our being, my being, the being of everyone, is the omnipotent power of God that lives at that center. It's your relationship to that which is at the center of your being that makes the difference to your living a life of wonder, generosity, aliveness, peace, and harmony, or not. It's just that simple. Emily Cady wrote, "The moment that any man really comes to recognize that which is absolute truth, that one spirit ever made manifest lives at the center of their being, he will cease to form any undue anxiety about anything." You see, if we really, truly, fully recognize what I will call the Christ within us that dwells in you and everyone, that Christ within makes no mistakes. Cady wrote, "The Holy Spirit lives within you. He cares for you, is working in you that which he would have you do, and is manifesting himself through you." But it's not just you, it's everyone, every person that lives on the face of this earth. And actually, it's every person and everything that lives on the face of this earth is connected completely with one source. And each one of us, as Cady says, is the radiating center of the same perfect one. However, some of us are radiating at different levels than others, but we are all still radiating that Christ source within us. Each one of us, at some point in our life, wants more good for ourselves and for our families, our relatives, friends. Yet each person individually is responsible for making connection with that central core of their being, which is their own personal radiating Christ light. So as we become more awake and aware of that Christ light, source light within us, and become more conscious of the fact that we are vibrating, radiating this light, it becomes more and more imperative that we stay centered on that radiating light within us. It doesn't matter what your religious beliefs are. The fact is, there is still only one God. So just like in a wheel, you have the rim and you have center hub, and the rim is the whole of humanity. Hub is God. But to get from the rim to the hub, you need spokes, and you need many of them. And so that's where the part of all these different religions come in. It's where all the different philosophies about God come in. So it doesn't matter what religion you are. What matters, if that religion is bringing you closer to love, to God, which is the central hub of all. Or if it's taking you away, causing you to be in judgment and condemnation and all of that, if it's taking you away from love, it's truly not one of the real hubs of the true will. When a religion brings you closer to loving God, all of mankind, no matter what, then you are moving along that spoke to the central hub of all that is. And that central hub represents that aspect of God, of Source, that is within us and as us. And from that central hub radiates out all that God is to each and every one of us. And if that's the case, then we could also look at the wheel as God as the central hub, the spokes of the wheel being all the radiating energy of God coming out to us. And we are the rim of the wheel, taking in all that energy. But we, as the rim of the wheel, are being held together by all of the different energies of God, Source, and pulling us into that hub for the oneness of life. So Source is the underlying substance of all things. It's unchanging and remains always unmoved by all of the things outside of us that change. Everything changes around us. Life is about change. But the one source, God, is still the underlying substance of everything. At some point in our lives, we choose to make God the central focus of our lives. And when we do that, we begin to allow the fullness of that light of God to move through us and to do things for us. You know, there's a lot of things that we can't do for ourselves. So this is where surrender comes in. And, you know, there are hundreds and hundreds of stories that are about how someone has been working and working, trying to fix something, trying to do something, trying to make something right on their own. And nothing seems to be working. And then one day they simply say, I don't know how to fix this. God, help me with this. And before they know it, whatever the situation is, it has completely been ironed out. And that was the surrendering of their individuality to allow the God source of their being to come forth into their world and into that particular situation. So God, as the underlying substance of all things, is there to be called into action, into our lives. And what we have to remember is that God is love. God is life, God is prosperity, God is health, God is aliveness, God is peace and harmony. God is all the good that we could ever imagine wanting to come on into this earth for us. Katie writes that the God source in us always moves into helpfulness when called on and trusted. It is as though infinite wisdom and power become transformed into infinite love with all the warmth and tender helpfulness, that they become focalized within the human body. In other words, when we can keep our minds centered on God, the Christ energy within us, that aspect of our being that is one with Source pulls our consciousness to be more focused on the totality of God as us. And as we continue to understand that God is in us, as us, flowing through us, then we begin to more fully understand that it is that which we can surrender everything to, this being that we call God. And when we begin to understand at the depth of what this energy is trying to truly bring forth to us, we are so much more apt to step back and allow the energy to do it for us. Katie wrote, the whole business of your Lord, the Father in you, is to care for you, to love you with an everlasting love, to note your slightest cry, and to rescue you. So some of you may ask, then why isn't he doing it? And the answer is because you're not recognizing this beautiful, awesome source and its power that resides in you. You see, you are the director of the force, this source energy. You are the one that calls it forth into all this beautiful, loving God force energy inside of you to assist you. God is not going to just step in and do it for you unless you ask. But when you ask, then the full force of the God inside of you that you recognize comes forth. And once you can fully recognize that the God power is in you, ready to come forth for you, all you have to do is just keep telling yourself that God, the source, now manifests itself as your all sufficiency, and that you're calling that forth. Or you could say, God is my complete health, and I call that energy forth into my body. That is my prosperity, my abundance, and I call that forth now into my life. Or you could just say, I call the completeness of God, the fullness of God, now into every aspect of my life and being. Katie wrote, God is a present help in time of need. But there must be a recognition of this presence inside of you, a turning away from human efforts, and an acknowledgement of God only before he becomes manifest. So today we've been talking about the unity of the Spirit, and that unity of Spirit actually means more than one thing. On one hand, we can say that unity is because we are all from source. God created us all, not man, but the energy of the one source God is what created us. We have come forth as entirely different individual people, all different ways we look, we act, we think, we feel, we believe. No matter our differences of any sort, we are still creations of the one source God that does not see those differences in us. This is one type of unity of the Spirit that we can speak about. Yet there is another type of unity of the Spirit, and that unity is when we bring our human mind, thoughts, feelings, and actions into union with the one source God, mind, feeling, and actions. That union creates for us to be the most beautiful, powerful, loving, compassionate, understanding human beings that the world has to offer. And when we can bring our human self and our God self together as one, that's when the true unity of the Spirit takes place. And believe it or not, it is so simple to do. There are two different statements that I make depending on what's happening in my life and how I feel. The first is God, I, one, not God and I are one, because that word and puts a separation between God and myself. It is God, I, one. And the more I say that statement, and it doesn't take very long, and it's almost as if God, I is one word, God, I, and that the I of me is God. And I begin feeling that connection, that oneness. The second statement that I use, and which I've been using more and more, are just the words I am. The words I am represent the absolute fullness of God. When Moses asked God what his name was, he said, I am. I am is the name of God. So when you make the statement, I am, you are already calling forth the fullness of the God source in you, as you. And you are calling that into your world in the absolute fullness of your being. It took me a while saying those words, I am, over and over again. But as I keep saying them more and more, I feel the radiating energy of source in me, as me, flowing through me, and in a sense, bringing everything into balance in my life. There are some days that I sit in meditation just saying, I am. And other times it's just a few moments sitting in front of the computer, or all of a sudden No matter what I'm doing, I just want to stop. And I say the words I am. Sometimes 2 or 3 times is all. And all of a sudden, I feel the presence and power of God in me as me. So today, as I end this talk, I invite you to think about both of these aspects of the unity of spirit. First and foremost, how we are a part of everything and everything that walks on the face of the earth or is on this earth. Everything was created by Source. And as its creation, we are all one. And of course, the other is unity of your spirit with the Spirit of God as one. Union with God, union with Source, complete union with the one Source God. So I want to thank you for listening to this message, but I'd like to end today with a meditation. And for today's meditation, we are going to say these two different statements 10 times each. And I ask you to just close your eyes and feel what these statements feel to you. Do they feel to you as a growing connection to Source, or is there some expansion inside of you of some sort, expanding to that connection with Source? So I ask you to just make yourself comfortable and take a beautiful deep breath in as you allow yourself to relax and close your eyes. I invite you to feel into the words as you say them softly to yourself. God, I one. 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 And let's just allow that energy to settle into us for a moment or two. Just sit with it. And now let's move to our I am affirmations. I am. 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 And let's let that energy settle in for. And when you're ready, just take a deep breath. As you let it out, just open your eyes and find yourself here and now. So thank you for joining with us today for this message. And I bless each and every one of you with your own personal unity of your spirit. God bless all. Take care. Namaste.